Well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about The Huntsman, Winter's War? Stick around and find out. Hi ho, hi ho, hi ho, hi ho, it's off to work we go. All right, does the YouTube thing, can I pick up my my singing? If I do that, the DMC whatever thingamajigger detector? Anyway. All right, well, that's only loosely related. I think that's fair use, because it's loosely related to the movie I'm giving you my uncut review of today, which is The Huntsman, Winter's War, based on it's kind of it's a sequel, actually, to Snow White and the Huntsman. The trailers really make it look like a prequel, but it's actually a sequel. Only the first, 10 minutes of the movie are prequel, and then the rest takes place after the events of Snow White and the Huntsman, so I guess that, it wouldn't be a bad idea to have seen the first one before watching this. I saw it a long time ago. I found it very forgettable, don't remember hardly any details, and I was still able to follow this movie just fine. So, anyway, let's talk about the synopsis of this one. The IMDb synopsis reads, as a war between rival queen sisters Ravenna and Freya escalates, Eric and fellow warrior Sarah, members of the Huntsman army raised to protect Freya, try to conceal their forbidden love as they combat Ravenna's wicked intentions. There's plenty of wicked intentions going around between both Ravenna and Freya. Freya has experienced tremendous loss and as a result has become cold, literally, and bitter, and so anyway, she's all about, love is not allowed, and anyone who loves is bad, so I'm going to capture all the children and raise them to just be my warriors and to not love, So it definitely has this kind of fairy tale vibe of taking very I don't want to say simplistic virtues, but very clear virtues, and making that kind of the central theme that the whole plot is moving around. In this case, love, and specifically the idea that love conquers all, and love is something that shouldn't be given up on. Even if we've had a bad experience with love, we should be willing to love again. But I would say even more than that, it's this idea of love ultimately conquers all. True love conquers all. The tone of the script is, like I said, it's a simplistic fairy tale. There's lots of lighthearted adventuring, but it does have splashes of serious drama, which I appreciated, because I just tend to not really connect with stuff that's overly light and just fun, whatever the crap that means, and silly or whatever. Much of this movie is actually a quest to find this magic mirror that Freya is trying to get her hands on, that used to be owned by her evil sister, who was killed at the end of the Snow White and the Huntsman movie. So she's trying to get her hands on this magic mirror so that she can conquer the rest of the lands and force everyone to stop loving. Does it sound like a fairy tale yet? The quest itself is pretty boring as quests go. At the climax of the questing portion, they walk across a river of molten metal with no incident whatsoever, and then they fight some CGI apes that everyone keeps calling goblins, and I know they're supposed to be goblins, but they move and act very much like apes, which for me, I find apes very silly. There was a lot going against me enjoying this movie just because of personal taste issues. I don't like lighthearted fantasy. I tend to like serious fantasy. I don't like apes. I think apes are silly. I never really can take them seriously as a threat in any kind of movie or anything. I'm sure if I was in a room with a real ape, I'd be like, crap, get me out of here, there's a giant ape there. But in movies and in fiction, I find them silly. I don't find them threatening or intimidating. The characters are, I thought, pretty shallow, as you'd expect from a fairy tale. They make some plot manufactured type of decisions that wouldn't make sense in the real world, but it was well, they have to maintain this conflict between these two characters, so she's not going to listen to reason at this point because we got to hang on to this tension for a while longer in the story, The story for me had the best impact near the end when the trailer spoiled conflict between the sister witches is revealed and dealt with. If you've seen the trailers for this movie, there's a core concept of the entire story that as you watch the movie, it's oh, they're going to keep this hidden, we haven't seen the trailer until the very end of the movie. But if you've seen the trailer, there's anyway, that was a little bit disappointing, but not so much because the rest of the movie wasn't working for me anyway. As far as the cast goes, I do want to say that solid performances in this movie elevated the script. I thought that Chris Hemsworth was relatable in some of the sad moments that his character has, and he was likable otherwise. He wasn't like the charming rogue that they probably were going for me, but he was fine. Nick Frost and Rob Brydon are the comic relief sidekick dwarves, and they made a few moments a little funnier for me. They at least got the corner of my mouth up. I don't laugh at funny things in movies. There has to be a really weird, specific, bizarre, offbeat sense of humor, I guess, for me most of the time. So that doesn't say much, but I did think that they took what the script had, which was very little for them, and made it funnier. Let's see who else. Emily Blunt. She's a nice tragic villain in this story that I thought gave me way more than the script gave her. So I'm really growing to appreciate her, and whenever I see her in a movie, I kind of look for it as like, okay, this is probably going to be quality with Emily Blunt in this role. Charlize, I never know how to say her name. Is it Charlize or Charlize? And is it Theron or Theron or Theron? I don't know. You pick one of those, fit them together, and that's what I said. But she's back as the evil witch who is evil for the sake of evil, which, that's the fairy tale. So, and she does a fine job. She gives off that vibe very nicely. Conspicuously absent is Kristen Stewart as Snow White, especially since I'm watching this like, oh, this is a sequel. So where's Snow White? Oh, there she is. Oh, they're only going to show her back in this movie. She's not going to face the camera. Okay, and then it's a brief scene, and she's done. So that was a little bit odd, but that's part of the behind-the-scenes business of making movies, right? As far as the stunts and visuals go, the design of the movie feels very much inspired by the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movie. So it's weighty and earthy and grim, and it's not very colorful at all, but it's still beautiful and interesting to look at. I thought the downside is that the expectation it gave me for the rest of the movie's tone was to be more grounded. Just like it looks grounded, so much of it kind of just visually feels very grounded. And I kept waiting for characters to make choices and act in ways that were a little bit more psychologically realistic, and because of the tone that the scenery and the costumes were giving me, and that never happened. So the experience ultimately felt empty to me. It felt like, okay, this is supposed to be. I felt like I was being told visually, this is supposed to be a grounded, world with weight and kind of real quote unquote characters, but everything that people were saying and stuff, maybe that won't have the same effect on other people, but that's the effect that it had on me. I wouldn't have liked it if it had a bright, colorful look. Don't get me wrong, but it might have made the movie a little bit more, I guess, consistent. It might have made me more understanding of the movie's lack of grounded, quote unquote, characters. I know that's kind of a vague, reviewer type word to use, grounded, but there you go. I'll just let you take that and do with it what you want. The trailer showed a lot of the final battle between the witches, and that's a shame. I wish that there had been more kind of sorcery and peril as a result of sorcery throughout the movie. I just wish that the sorcery would have been a bigger part of this movie instead of coming mostly at the end. The combat, is fine, but it's nothing you haven't seen in other movies, and every once in a while I'm like, why are they using shaky cam here? There is like no reason to use shaky cam in this moment unless you're just trying to hide something about the fight choreography you're not feeling confident about. I don't know. So it just seemed a little pointless in a few cases. So is there anything in this movie that might stimulate worthwhile thought or conversation about moral, philosophical, or spiritual matters as a result of watching it? I don't know. I think you got to be searching for it, and I usually, kind of am when I go into these movies, so that I have, something aside from, everything else that every other critic, I'm not a critic, but every other, kind of reviewer, or whatever you want to call these things, talks about. I try to differentiate my content a little bit by looking specifically for these kinds of themes, and, So, but I think if you're not looking for those kinds of things, you might not think of anything worthwhile in terms of moral, philosophical issues or anything like that. The question I came away with, was, okay, well, does love conquer all? And what the crap does that even mean? Many characters in this movie had bad experience with love in the past. Someone in two instances, someone apparently betrayed them or let them down, and as a result, they've become cold. They're wounded and cold, and they have closed themselves off to loving again. And in both of those cases, it was actually just a misunderstanding, which is eventually cleared up, as you can tell is coming a mile mile away. The message of the movie, though, seems to be that love conquers all. But love in this movie is never defined beyond being just a strong feeling for someone. So like the source of love, the thing that makes it consistent, is never explored. So it seems to have no relevance for real life. I mean, I know some folks who have been really betrayed. It wasn't just a misunderstanding. They were really betrayed and abandoned by their spouses. And they might have trouble saying love conquers all along with this movie. So for this movie, I think, to have weight and relevance for us, for the real world, I think we have to define love. That would have been great if they would have explored that somewhere in this movie. Love as just a powerful feeling conquers nothing, at least not with any consistency or dependability. So we shouldn't head into, say, marriage or parenting assuming that those powerful feelings will always be there to conquer every lousy day. They won't. That's not my experience. If that's been yours, man, yippity-doo-dah for you. Love only conquers all when it is not simply a feeling, but I think a virtue in action. A virtue in action. That's what love has to be if it's going to conquer anything. A virtue in action. The Greek word describing love in the New Testament, the love that we should have for each other, is agape, and it refers specifically to a love that thinks about the good of others before the good of oneself. Sometimes that thinks about the good of others and does things for them that maybe they won't even enjoy, but is best for them, So it is a more complex love that is driven, I think, and put into action with wisdom and selflessness, It's, let's see here. Well, 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7 uses this Greek word, so let me just read that really quick. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, meaning not as we would possibly take that as just believes every thing that they're told, but it's willing to trust. Hopes all things and endures all things. And that's from the ESV translation of 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4 through 7. That's the kind of love that conquers all, this virtue in action. And that's what Jesus modeled for us with his life and with his death. I would love for reimaginings of fairy tales like this to include a more grounded exploration of their moral themes. It's not what we got this time around, but I would be really interested in that. I think it would be kind of cool and a way to kind of make these old fairy tales come to life again. If we took these, overly simplistic concepts that are at the center of them and actually explored the meaning of those concepts and the relevance they have to our everyday existence, that would be really cool to see. Anyway, I have no idea what your tastes are, but if I were to travel back in time, I'd say to myself, Peter, skip it. Just skip it. It's not your kind of movie. Spend the extra time playing a fantasy RPG, either paper and pencil or video game, but skip this one. It's rated PG-13 for fantasy, action, violence, and some sensuality. All right, those are my thoughts. I'd love to get yours in the comments below. You can also support this channel by visiting spiritblade.com and seeing what we have for you there. I almost skipped out on seeing this movie because I am closing in on the end of production for the Spirit Blade audio drama trilogy, the third part of which I've been working on for the last, I don't know how many years now, a few years at least, and that's going to be seeing a release very soon. So if you're curious about spiritblade.com and you want to support us, then go over to spiritblade.com and see what we have for you there. Please do like, share, and subscribe. If you like this video and want to share it with somebody and want more videos like it, that's how you do that. And then I hope, where's my thing? Crap, here it is. Boom! I hope you visit christiangeekcentral.com for a ton more content and community, and join us there soon as we continue to geek out and seek the truth.